Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Buhari and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Buhari, and he is USA Today Boxing Junkie editor Michael Rosenthal, and we are here to talk boxing. Now, the fight world is buzzing over the weekend's events, and of course, we're going to break down all the fights from the Charlo doubleheader. Plus, we'll have former world champion Regis Prograis joining us a little later in the show. And finally, we're going to take a look at the Charlo twins and where they stand or don't stand on pound for pound list. Truth be told, I'm still coming down off the high of last weekend's Showtime pay-per-view. Great performances all around, particularly by Jermall and Jermell Charlo, of course. Lots of eye-opening performances on the card. Mike, what did you enjoy the most about this event?
Well, the two main events, obviously. I was really looking forward to those fights, and neither one of them disappointed, which is the key to everything, right?
And rare.
Right, and rare. But the other fights were, especially a couple of them. I love the Figueroa knockout. I love the Casimiro knockout, especially because that makes me even with you now in the prediction league. But yeah, just overall, I mean, come on, how often do you see a pay-per-view card with two fights as compelling as Charlo Derevyanchenko and Charlo Rosario? And I'm not even talking about the other fights on the card, which were also good. The Neri fight was surprising, which is always an interesting thing to see. Just overall, if you're a fan, you had to enjoy that card.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought it was fantastic. Like you said, even on paper, it was great, and watching it unfold was even better, which is such a huge plus and so rare to see. Was there anything you would change or perhaps didn't like about the formatting for boxing's first doubleheader? I mean, I saw a lot of people talking about the intermission, and they'd cut down on the time. What did you think?
Well, I actually personally appreciated the intermission. I think because it was a long night, and I think we needed a break. But overall, if I could tweak anything, maybe the card was a bit too long. It went on for 7 hours, I think. Wow. Something like that, including the break. Maybe you have 4 or 5 fights. Maybe you have the co-features back to back at the end, like in a more traditional way, just to kind of shorten it. Maybe I think you had mentioned maybe the length of a NFL game might work better. Maybe a little longer is okay, but 7 hours is a really long time. Again, though, it's really hard to complain about that card because there was just some really good, fun boxing.
Exactly. And with respect to the intermission, it's kind of hard to foresee what's going to happen or what the momentum will be like when you're putting the schedule together. Plus, you got to allow some time for everyone working the show to catch their breath. It was certainly a long show, and as you just mentioned, we discussed beforehand that maybe if you make it like an NFL game, 4 hours long or something like that. But either way, I think it's safe to say that it was completely worth it. One of the best cards I've seen in a long while. Bottom line is, if you're a boxing fan, that was a great weekend. But there was a bit of news that sort of flew under the radar, as I haven't heard anyone talk about this, Mike, and you're the one who brought it to my attention. The Nevada State Athletic Commission is adopting a new instant replay policy for boxing. There will now be a review official ringside. They can initiate instant replay at any time during the bout simply by turning on a yellow light that will be placed on the ring in sight of the referee. Now, here's the kicker. When the light goes on, the referee will pause the action, send the fighters to neutral corners, and consult with the review official. Now, the referee can also request an instant replay. Again, the action will be stopped while the officials convene and determine a ruling. The fighters will not be able to communicate to their corners during this time, but the key word here is time, right, Mike? I mean, what do you make of this new rule?
Well, I think it has the potential to be a very good rule, but not as it was described in the ESPN story, which is where I was reading about it and where we both read about it. I like the designated review official. Great idea. I actually thought of that previously. I thought that's what they should have had all along. I like the yellow light to indicate a review. I hate the fact that, if I understand it correctly, the fight will be stopped to conduct the review. I remember when Nevada first adopted instant replay. It's been several years. Keith Kaiser was the executive director, smart guy, good guy. He made it clear that at that time that the flow of the fights would not, under any circumstances, be compromised. I agreed with that 100%. Boxing is 3-minute rounds with 1 minute rest in between them. That's boxing. For example, if a guy's tired, you can't stop everything, give a guy a break. That's part of boxing. It changes boxing if you stop the action. The solution, which is what you're going to ask me, easy. The review official can conduct his or her review independent of the referee between rounds or during the fight, and then hand down a ruling after the next round. Just don't stop it. I know the review official's attention might be on the review instead of the action, which could be a bad thing, but that's better than stopping the fight. And maybe you have like a backup official who watches the action while this guy's doing his thing, reviewing whatever the situation is, that sort of thing. It's just imperative that the fight not be stopped, but I think they're on the right track. And to give them credit, they did say that it could still be tweaked. It's sort of like a process. Right. So hopefully they'll get this right. I say don't stop the action.
Yeah, the thing is, I think they're on the right track like you. I just don't know if there's a right answer. One thing I was thinking about was, and I guess they could make the argument regarding stopping the action, is if they don't stop the action, right, and someone commits a foul, we could see a knockout because of that foul or something else, and then they would have completely missed the call. Is that reason enough to implement this form of instant replay? I mean, I really don't know. So there are a lot of different circumstances that makes it hard to play with the rules and find that right pitch for instant replay. But I'm with you. I mean, I think that it's a great idea. Let's see where it goes, and hopefully they find a workaround that's stopping the fight, because that just would ruin a lot of things. Well, anyway, we know where we stand on this, and that is all for this week's news. So let's jump into the PBC Fight of the Week. This Saturday, October 3rd, FS1 PBC Fight Night returns live from the Microsoft Theater in Los Angeles with featherweight action. In the main event, as undefeated Filipino prospect Mark Magsayo makes his PBC debut against Rigoberto Hermosillo. That's a 10-round bout. Mike, let's have a look at the essentials.
Okay, Magsayo's last fight, Panya Uthak, August 31st, 2019. So he will have been out of the ring for over a year. Hermosillo fought Victor Slavinsky in November 2019, so not quite as long a break. Magsayo is from the Philippines. Hermosillo is Mexican. Magsayo, 25 years old. Hermosillo, 28. They both turned pro in 2013. Magsayo's 20-0 with 14 knockouts. Hermosillo 11-2-1 with 8. Obviously, Magsayo's 5-0 in his last 5 with 3 knockouts. Hermosillo 3-2 with 3 knockouts. 0-2 in his last 2 fights. KO percentage for Magsayo 70%, 53% for Hermosillo. Neither guy's got a ton of rounds. 95 for Magsayo, 59 for Hermosillo. Magsayo fights from an orthodox stance. Hermosillo is a southpaw. There's quite a difference here. Magsayo is 5'6". Hermosillo is 5'9". I couldn't find a reach for either guy.
This is Magsayo's first headlining event on PBC here in the U.S., and he's got a really nice-looking record. We know he's signed to Manny Pacquiao's MP Promotions, but Mike, really, how good is he?
Well, I think the jury's still out. He looks good to me. He seems to have the skills. He's poised, explosive. He could definitely knock you out. And he has balls. He got up from a knockdown to stop Chris Avilos. I like that. And he seems to have 2 things that will help him in terms of marketing. He seems to have some charisma, and he's a good-looking kid, which never hurts when you're trying to build up a fighter. Here's the thing, though. He hasn't really been tested yet. I want to see him against the next-level guy. And I'm not sure that Hermosillo is that guy, so he'll probably look good in this fight, but we won't learn too much about him until later.
Yeah, I mean, Hermosillo, I'm assuming this is supposed to be a showcase for Magsayo. Hermosillo's he's not necessarily a walkover. He had a split decision loss, I think, Manny Robles III, which was pretty competitive.
Yeah.
And he hasn't been stopped before, so, I mean, I would assume he has a pretty good beard. It'd be interesting to see if Magsayo is able to do that. But I'm assuming you're picking Magsayo to win.
Yeah. Hermosillo's tall, as I mentioned. He's left-handed, which can complicate things. You never know. And you mentioned the Manny Robles fight. I guess Manny Robles has a decent reputation, I think, and to fight him, to lose a split decision is pretty good. So the guy's probably a pretty good fighter. Could be a little bit awkward for Magsayo. But that said, I think the Filipino figures him out, wears him down, and I think he's going to be the first to stop him, 8th or 9th round.
I'm with you. I like Magsayo to stop him. Round 8 is what my prediction will be. And speaking of predictions, Mike and I are tied in the prediction league at 22-5. Once again, my allegiance to Ghana.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I appreciate your loyalty, but it keeps backfiring on you.
Well, I'm not going to let my heart rule over my head ever again. I assure you, I'm done with that. Now, we've got some other good bouts on this card. Lots of good prospects, actually. Undefeated welterweight Paul Kroll takes a big step up in his 8th pro bout facing Lucas Santamaria. And also on the card, twin brothers, not the Charlos. That twin brothers I've heard a lot about. They were interviewed on At Home with Ray Flores on PBC's IG Live. I'm talking about Chavez and Angel Barrientos. Both these guys are 18 years old. Chavez is older by 13 minutes. Chavez is 2-0, fights at super featherweight, while Angel is 6-0 and fights at light flyweight. Both guys are ridiculously tall for their respective weight classes, 5'11". Incredible amateur background. So it'll be nice to see how they're progressing as professionals. And we are progressing with this show. So let's bring in our guest this week. He will make his return to the ring on Saturday, October 24th versus Juan Heraldez on Showtime pay-per-view. Let's welcome the former super lightweight champion of the world, Regis Prograis. Regis, first, how are you and your daughter and your family doing?
Oh, man, we actually, thank God everybody's doing fine right now, man. I'm back in, I don't know if people know about me, but I'm back in Texas, and we all doing good, everybody's doing fine right now.
What's the situation like in Texas? Has it been difficult to adjust to the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. I mean, I went when the pandemic first started, I was living in LA, and I came back to Texas. So yeah, everything's been fine. I live in Katy, Texas, so I'm like out on the outskirts right now. And yeah, as far as pandemic wise, it's kind of a way of life right now. That's all. It's normal for us.
Yeah, it is. Regis, a lot of fighters were concerned about gaining weight and not being able to train properly. Was that ever an issue or a problem for you?
No, and the reason why I trained the whole time, like since the pandemic, because, like I was supposed to fight the Maurice Hooker. I was supposed to fight him at first. And then, of course, the whole pandemic thing happened, and that was off. And then we were supposed to still fight again since the pandemic happened. And that whole, literally, I'm talking about the whole time, the pandemic. Since the pandemic, I've been training. At first, like I said, I was in LA, and then I came back to Texas, and I literally been like training nonstop since the pandemic started. So it never been a problem for me.
Good to hear. So I read that you have a habit of eating late night snacks. In-N-Out French fries were mentioned. Any truth to that rumor?
It is. It's definitely true to that rumor. Yeah, for sure. I'm a down south southern boy. I'm from New Orleans, you know what I'm saying? So we New Orleans, if you've never been there, it's some of the best food in the whole world. So that's kind of just what I'm adjusted to and I'm used to. So I was raised with horrible eating patterns, and sometimes those patterns still come out, So every now and then, like I remember when I was living in LA, like we would leave the gym because I was training at nighttime when I was in LA, and so we'll be leaving the gym like 1:00 sometimes, 1:00 a.m. And the only thing that was open by my house and out there was Taco Bell. So we would all go, me and my friends, we would all go to Taco Bell and get all kinds of stuff and be eating like 1:30 in the morning, and and the same thing out here sometimes. So yeah, every now and then I do. I am a fat boy, and as far as in the core, I am a fat boy. So every now and then I do eat a little bad.
Yeah, Texas has got some good food, right? I don't know about Katy, but I know Texas in general is pretty good when it comes to
Texas
to food.
Does, yeah. Houston, Houston, Katy, like they have a lot of good food here also, So, but I'm more of a, as far as like fast food wise, I'm not Of course I eat it just like everybody else would, but I'm a big fan of like home cooked meals. Like I'm a huge fan. Like I love that more than anything else. I'd rather come home and eat than go to a restaurant. That's just how I am.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And speaking of coming home, boxing is back, and I'm sure you watched the fights over the weekend with the Charlo twins. I know you're close with them. What were your thoughts on their performance?
I'm proud of those dudes, man. Sometimes it just feels so real, like every time I see them and they tell me how proud they are of me, and I see their mama, she's like, man, I'm so proud of you, and it's the same thing with them. We used to I remember me and Jamel catching the bus, cause I sometimes when we was younger, I would go pick them up from the gym because I'm a year older than them, so I had a car earlier than them. So I would go pick them up I would go to the house and pick them up to the gym, and then bring them to the gym. And it was a period that my car broke and we caught the bus. We was training at Savannah, we caught the bus. So I mean, just it's just from catching the bus to the gym to being on top of the world is just a different type of feeling, to being a world champion. It's a different type of feeling, So I mean, I'm just super proud of them. They living out their dreams, and you would, and when we was training back in the day, you would never thought they would have been world champions. They just wasn't extraordinary and stuff, but they just kept at it. They always kept at it. And even me, I would never thought if you would have said I was gonna be a world champion, back when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, people like, what? Hell no, he'll never be a world champion. And I was a world champion, so and it's the same thing for them. I'm just so proud of them because I mean, it just just through hard work, they got it.
Yeah. Would you say that's the difference? Just the dedication and the perseverance? That's what separates you guys from the rest of the pack?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it was just I remember I always stayed in the gym, and, to be honest, Jamel was the more dedicated. For a while, Jamal actually stopped boxing and he started working because, he wanted to make money and stuff like that. So, Jamal has, he stopped, and, I think when he was maybe the last year in high school and right out of high school and stuff like that, he started working, and he had stopped boxing for a little while. And I always stayed with it. But Jamel was always, he was the one that, Jamel, the one that just beat, got all the belts just now. He just always stuck with, he was always so disciplined. And, and then after, and then Maul kind of, he was doing it. Of course, he did it too. So yeah, that was the main difference. Just sticking with it, just always going, just super hard and just never stopping. And that's the biggest difference, because I actually tweeted somehow earlier about the best fighters I ever seen in my life. And it was Highland Williams and Ricardo Williams and Omar Henry and Rasheed Warren. Of course, Rasheed Warren ended up being a world champion, but it was just those. I mean, and they was just so special when we saw them in the gym. And we wasn't nowhere close to that. The twins and me, we wasn't nowhere close to that. But we stuck with it more than anybody else, and it just it happened. Just sticking with it, keep going nonstop, and getting better every day.
So you're set, Regis. You're set to return on October 24th against Juan Heraldez on SHOWTIME pay-per-view. So how excited are you to be back in the ring?
Oh man, it's crazy. I'm so excited. Just like I said, I've been training since the pandemic started. Of course, every now and then I'll go places. I travel a lot and stuff like that. I went to New Orleans and Colorado and that type of thing for a few days. But I've been training the whole time. So, it's just my main thing is I want to be a world champion again. And of course we had a lot of hiccups. The Maurice Hooker thing fell out, and then after this, we was just the whole Lou DiBella thing was happening. So, I'm so glad just to be back and to be on this platform. So, it's undescribable for words because I'm just ready. I'm just so ready to be back, fighting again and basically just doing what I love to do.
You mentioned the Hooker situation a couple of times. So in your own words, what actually happened to the Hooker bout?
Well, so at first, we were supposed to fight at, 140. It was supposed to be April 17th. We were supposed to fight at 140, and he said he couldn't make it. So we said 143, and then we was like, all right, fine. That was supposed to, and we said, yeah, 143. Okay, that's fine. We'll do 143. Then of course the pandemic happened, and we was both in training camp. I was ready. I think I was in my third week of training camp when, the whole pandemic thing happened, and they like, it's canceled. So, I was living in LA at the time, and all my trainers, they left, they went home, they came back here to Houston, and that was scratched. And then I just, like I said, I kept training. So they rescheduled it. And when they rescheduled it, I guess he was eating. I guess he was eating. He got real big. I saw a picture of him. He got huge. He got real big. He probably was like, I think he was, rumors has that he was like around like 190 pounds.
Yikes.
And he looked that big. Yeah, he was huge. Like I saw a picture of him jump rope. He had a big old stomach. His face was real fat. His legs was real big. Everything was just real big on him, So I know he got big, and so he was just like, I'm going to 147. So we're like, I already in my mind already, I'm not going to 147 right now. I want to be a world champion again at 140. That's just something personal I want to do. Is I want to be a 2-time champion before I go to 147. It's just something that I want to do. So I was like, I'm not going to. For me, I was like, I'm not going to 147. All right, whatever you do. So of course, the management and everybody they try to save the fight. And they was trying to do a negotiation deal. And then my manager was like, all right, what would you become? I said, all right, give him a pound, 144. And then I think he said, they was like, what about 145? No, I won't do 145. Let's do 144. And the reason was that I don't want to get my body adjusted too big, and I can't come back down to 140. So that's why I said, all right, let's do all right, I'll give him a pound. Let's do 144. And then I think he told Dan Rafael he could do 145. And at first, and then he wasn't budging on 144. They was like, no, not. And I said, all right, tell my manager, I want to fight. I told my manager, all right, tell him 145. Let's give him what he wants. And then they came back and said 147. They're going straight to 147. And it's not going to happen. 145, 144 is not going to happen. They're going straight to 147. Then I hit him up. I texted him on Instagram. It was like, man, I said something I forgot. And he called me a girl or whatever. I was like, make the weight and I'll show you who a girl. He was like, I'm going to, he was like, do what you want. I'm at 147. I was like, so, he was just saying he was set on being at 147. So I guess that's what happened to the fight. It was, it was scrapped. He wanted to go up and I wasn't ready to go up right now. And that's it basically.
You mentioned, starting camp for it, having to restart and so forth. How difficult was it to start, stop, and then do that, all over again?
It was very difficult. I actually started camp like 3 or 4 times or something like that. I mean, like I said, the first time the Hooker thing was happening, that got canceled after 3 weeks. And then after that, we was training again for the Hooker thing. We were still training. We went back to training and stuff like that regular. And then that fight fell through. Then I think at the time I was like dealing with the zone and stuff, and I think they had a fight for me, and on like a short notice, a 3 weeks notice or something like that. I started training, I started sparring, I started doing everything. I think it was a month notice, so I started doing everything I had to do. That fight got canceled, and then I think I had and now. So it was about 3 camps that, I started and just stopped. So it was very, it was a long ride. It was very frustrating.
Do you think that you ever foresee a possibility of you guys fighting sometime in the future?
I do. I think so. You know what? Because it's something, I think it's a buildup now, like we honestly don't like each other, like I can't say I really don't like him like that, but at the same time, I don't. He said some things about me. He said he'll slap me. He do all this. It's like, all right, whatever. Come. And now it's just like I kind of responded to that, and I call him a bitch. I call him a pussy, all kinds of stuff like that. So I think that fight will happen one day. Because it's a build up. And it's something that I think it's something that people do want to see. So I think the fight could still happen one day. And and then we always have beef because we fought the amateurs. We fought in the state Texas the US championships, and that I fought. Yeah, that's another thing too. We fought when we was in the amateurs and stuff like that. So, and I won, and he always felt like he won. But I actually have the fight on YouTube now, so you can go watch it and judge for yourself.
Oh, cool.
So I think that's why, I think that was a big reason too.
You mentioned, you mentioned your promoter earlier. You reportedly bought yourself out of your contract and became a free agent. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate, number one? And number two, was there any particular reason why you went that route?
Well, let me see, how should I put this? Yeah, it's true. And I just thought that it was just time to do that, time to be a free agent and just move on to the next, basically, let's try to put it in good words, move on to the next part of my career. I think that's like the main thing, just to move on and it's just a new chapter. That's all. It wasn't nothing good. It wasn't bad. It was just a new chapter. It's like, right now it's like a new chapter in my life. And, that's kind of how it went.
Got it. We understand that you entertained several offers before choosing this opportunity. What factors went into making that decision? Was it just money? Was it more than that?
I kind of like the PBC banner, man. I think like as far as like the whole Al Heyman thing, he treats. I know the twins personally, and I hear about like Errol Spence and Adrian Brown, and I see all the interviews with them and everything they do with Al, and I mean all those dudes been offered huge money by other outside sources, and all of them like, man, kiss my ass, I'm staying with Al Heyman, and it's a reason for that. It gotta be a big reason for that. Al treats those fighters very good. I know some history about Al Heyman. With like his brother Bobby Heyman, he fought Sugar Ray Leonard, and he saw how he was getting mistreated, and he wanted to like really help out the fighters. He really wanted to be there for the fighters, and it's not a lot of people in the business that would try to do that. They kind of look at us like commodities. A fighter's basically a fighter is like a commodity. They look at us and once you lose or once they don't need you no more, they kind of throw you away. But I think Al Heyman, for what I understand, he doesn't do that. He really cares about the fighters because his brother was a fighter himself, and his brother was done dirty. And I think like that's that was like the main reason to go from there.
Give us your thoughts on your opponent on October 24th, Juan Heraldez.
To be honest, I don't really know too much about him. I know he's undefeated. He's 16-0, I think, with 10 knockouts and a draw. I just know he's gonna come to fight. That's for me. Like that's the main thing. I just know he's gonna come. He's gonna come to fight. He's fighting me. I'm a former world champion, and I'm one of the most dangerous people in the division. So I know he's doing everything in his preparation to beat me. And that's the main thing. I'm not overlooking anybody. And for me, this training camp, I'm just taking it way. I can't say I'm taking it way more serious because I was always in training camp, but I feel like right now I'm super, super focused, soon as I moved, I was living in LA and I moved back I'm originally from New Orleans, but then I moved to Houston because of Hurricane Katrina. And, after I won a world championship, I moved to LA, and it was just out in LA. I loved it, I still love LA all together. And it's just like, but the focus factor was in it, in LA. When I was living in LA, I would always go to the gym, but when I the beach, because I was like spear fishing and free diving out there in LA. So I bring all my spear fishing clothes and beach clothes and all that, and I go to the beach here. So that's kind of what I was doing in LA. And back to Texas, for me, what I do is I go to the gym, I come home and take a nap, just like I was doing. I missed the first time y'all called because I was taking a nap. And that's kind of what I do here. I go to every single day. I go to the gym. I take a nap, and I train again. I got to train. Matter of fact, I got to train about 30 more minutes again. So, I'm just taking and to get to the point. I'm just just very, very serious. I'm very focused right now. I in my last fight, and that was just some things that was going on in my last fight. My fight London with Josh Taylor. I lost my belt, and sometimes it got to me because I felt like I was supposed to win that fight. I still got won, but it was a close fight, and of course they gave it to him. But still, I didn't dominate like I should have dominated, basically. And this fight, I want to dominate like I always dominated. So, that's kind of the whole point I was trying to make.
Now, by the time you step in the ring on October 24th, it would have been 1 year since you last fought. Mm-hmm. Are you concerned at all about ring rust?
No, because I've been training the whole time. I'm not gonna lie, I would have been concerned about ring rust if I kept in the whole year, but like I said, I had so many fights fall out, and then I trained the whole time nonstop. So no, I don't have no concern about ring rust at all. That's not even on my mind.
You just mentioned the Taylor fight. Looking back on that now, you mentioned that it's something that happened and you're ready to move on. But what went wrong there? Could you expand a little bit about on what you said?
I mean, I won't say nothing went wrong. It's just like I fought in front of 20,000 people in somebody else's country. That was like the main thing, and I should have been more dominant. That's all. That's like the main thing. And I'm not gonna lie, I definitely credit Taylor a lot because he was tough. I really thought that I knew I wasn't getting the decision over there. I knew that. I already knew that. So I really felt like a lot of people told me don't go over there, don't go fight him over there. You don't need to do it. Don't fight him over there. And but yeah, I still went over there because I really thought that I can stop him. I thought that I can knock him out. I thought I'd be able to knock him out, but he was tough. He withstood it. We were for 12 hard rounds, So it wasn't too much that just went bad. I mean, it was some things in training camp. It was some things that happened like in London and some things in training camp, But it wasn't like it wasn't like it went wrong all the way wrong, So. But it was just like for me, I went over to London, and I went all the way to London in front of 20,000 people in the stadium, over in the stadium, all going against me, So, that definitely plays a big factor. So, but I learned, and it's just about adversity, and I got past that. I learned from a lot. I got past it. And I feel like I'm going to be so much stronger from that. Like after this fight, just going through that adversity, I'm going to feel so much stronger.
There's talk that Taylor will end up unifying or in a title unification bout with Jose Ramirez. How do you see that fight playing out?
I don't think it could beat Taylor, really. I think I was talking in the gym today. My trainers was like, man, Ramirez not going to fight him. I was like, nah, Ramirez fight him. I don't think he scared like that. I definitely think he will fight him. He's going to fight Taylor. His manager, Rick, me and him go back and forth all the time. At first, I was supposed to fight Ramirez, and he kind of ducked me for a little while, and then the whole tournament thing happened. But yeah, I think Taylor's going to win. I got Taylor winning that fight. Yeah, I definitely have Taylor winning that fight. I think Taylor is a real good body puncher on the inside, and equally he could be good on the outside also. So, and Ramirez he didn't look good in his last fight with Postol. You could have gave the fight to Postol, and then with Zepeda, you could have gave the fight to Zepeda too. Actually Timothy Bradley actually gave the fight to Zepeda. So I mean, he was a champion. He really, you can say he lost 2 fights. So, but I have Josh Taylor win that fight.
Now, getting back to you, there are a lot of other big fights at 140, and one of the bigger names out there is Adrian Broner. Is he someone that's on your radar?
Man, I've been wanting Adrian Broner for years. I watched the fight last night when I fought Joel Diaz, and that was the person I called out. I called him and Crawford out. I've been on that fight for years, man. It's just a fight I want. He said some words about me. I say some words about him. We actually know a lot of the a lot of the same people. We know a lot of the same people. So, we kind of go back and forth all the time with each other through those people. So, I mean, I think that'll be a huge fight. I always said that if they make that fight between me and Broner, that'll be the biggest fight they can make at 140. Nobody won't even pay attention to other fights just because of me and him. We both got loud mouths. We both a little arrogant. We both talk a lot. And we both know all the same people. We both like hip hop world and all that stuff. I know same people he know, and we talk. We kind of talk through those people all the time about how we go fuck each other up and stuff. So yeah, like.
Yeah, I mean, do you think he feels the same way towards you? Is it bad blood or just competitiveness?
I don't think it's bad blood. To be honest, I don't think Adrian Broner has bad blood towards nobody. He's just a clown. Everybody knows he's a clown and stuff like that, But I don't think it's bad blood. It's not bad blood, but it's definitely competitiveness. Bad blood. It's not like the bad blood, but we really genuinely don't like each other. But as far as like Adrian Broner, he don't know me and I don't really know him for it to be like bad blood and stuff like that. So I said I whoop Adrian Broner ass. That's all. I said I think I can stop. I think I'd be the first person to stop him.
Cool. But obviously, there are a lot of big names at 47. Would you like to move up there at some point? And if so, when do you think that might happen?
I do. I would want to go to 147 eventually, but right now I just want to be a world champion again at 140 first. That's like the main thing. It's just something I just want. I have to be a world champion again at 140. Even if we get the Taylor rematch or something like that, I just want my belts. I just want my belt again at 140. I want to be a world champion at 140 before I move up to 147. That's the main thing.
Fantastic. Regis, we know how busy you are. You're working hard. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
No problem, man.
All right, it's time for the week in review, and what a week it was. Last Saturday, Showtime and PBC put on one of the best boxing cards in recent memory. 6 fights, 5 world title bouts, and nearly all of them were also good. We've got a lot to go over here, so we're going to start with the final main event. WBC World Super Welterweight Champion Jermell Charlo took on WBA and IBF counterpart Jason Rosario in a 154-pound unification between two extremely explosive punchers, and Jermell Charlo just shined. I mean, boy, did he ever. Dropped Rosario 3 times in all. The finale, a jab to the pit of the stomach in the 8th that had Rosario on the canvas, seemingly in agony. Charlo now holds 3 belts at 154. Mike, is there any question that he is the man in that division?
Well, no, absolutely not. I thought the performance was spectacular, and I think there's no question that he's the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you think of their game plans? I mean, Rosario coming forward, stalking and working the body, while Charlo used his jab and more movement than we're accustomed to seeing from him.
Well, Rosario did what I expected him to do, which was to walk down Charlo. I think Charlo expected that too, and he was like, "Yeah, baby, come to me," and he let him have it. Looked like a good game plan to me. 3 knockdowns, a 1-punch knockout against a guy like that. It doesn't get much better than that. And from Rosario's standpoint, he was still in the fight after 7 rounds, which I attribute to his game plan. He was busier than Charlo. One judge actually gave him 4 of the first 7 rounds. He just couldn't stand up to Charlo's power. I just thought it was interesting is after the fact, Rosario said that it really wasn't the last punch that was the key punch. It was the second knockout that he never really recovered from. Yeah. So when he got hit by that body shot, he was already kind of out of it, and that just sort of sealed the deal. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I remember that's how Jermell used to fight prior to joining trainer Derek James. By the way, speaking of Derek James, he now has 2 unified world champions at the same time, Charlo and WBC IBF World Welterweight Champion Errol Spence Jr. That is quite a feat. I don't know if any trainer has ever accomplished that. But anyway, back to Charlo. In his earlier days, he was like a mover, a boxer. And then he got with Derek James, who's taught him how to sit down on his punches. So now he's got it all. I mean, I think what stood out to me was the intelligence and the discipline that Charlo showed, because Rosario brought the heat. some educated pressure that he was applying in there, cutting off the ring, working the body. And I think a couple times he more than got Charlo's attention, but Charlo maintained his composure. He didn't get drawn into exchanges. He wasn't afraid to clinch, which is very mature. He did some good body work as well. And it also helps that he's got a great chin. But I think his experience was key, and he made his punches count. Now, what did you think of that jab to the stomach that knocked Rosario out? I know you alluded to it before. That wasn't like anything I've ever seen before.
Yeah, it was one of the strangest knockouts that I've ever seen. I guess he just got him like in the right place. And as I mentioned, I think he was already halfway gone anyway. I know jabs can do damage, but that just destroyed the guy. And then when he was laying there convulsing or having a seizure, maybe he was just trying to regain his breath. I was thinking, what the hell? I mean, this is something different. I fear for the guy for a second. I was like, what was going on? I even saw a clip of Jamal kind of going, whoa, what's wrong with that guy? For a few seconds. Maybe that knockout goes down in history. Charlo stopped a strong, rugged guy with a jab to the gut. He's a scary dude.
Yeah, he sure is. And you mentioned it, Rosario never really recovered from the knockdown in the 6th round. That left hook that Charlo landed there totally took away his equilibrium. Really, if it hadn't occurred so late in that stanza, I think Charlo stops him then. And I remember Rosario walking back to his corner. He could barely stand straight.
Right.
And he still seemed, uncoordinated in the 7th round. But then in between rounds, I saw this on social media yesterday, between the 7th and 8th round, at one point, it appears as if he's nodding off to sleep while he's on the stool.
I saw that too.
What'd you think?
Listen, I'm just speculating. I don't know. Maybe he did, but I think he was just, you see guys hanging their heads, they're both discouraged. They're hurt. They're kind of out of it. I doubt he was falling asleep. He was probably just hanging his head like going, oh man, I hope this ends soon. Kind of thing. But who knows?
Well, it did. I mean, the thing is, he certainly was in bad shape from that knockdown, and that jab to the pit of the stomach sort of put the finishing touches on it. Brilliant performance by Jermell Charlo, and I think nothing to be ashamed of for Jason Rosario. Mike, where do these two go from here? Let's start with Jason Rosario.
Okay. Well, he needs to rebuild a little bit, I guess. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's going to want to take a giant step back and fight a guy you've never heard of to sort of start the rebuilding process. Maybe he goes into a fight against a legitimate guy. Maybe he fights like a Tony Harrison or a Jarrett Hurd, that level guy, which is a top level guy. Or if he wants to ease back in, maybe a guy like a Jesse Vargas would be good for him, somebody at that level. We'll see what he wants to do. Listen, the guy's only 25 years old. There's no rush for him. Maybe his handlers say, listen, let's just get back into the win column in our next fight and then target one of the top guys after that. That kind of makes sense to me, but we'll see. It kind of depends on the attitude of Rosario.
Yeah, I like the Jarrett Hurd fight for him too, and Tony Harrison, Erislandy Lara even. There are a lot of good fights basically at 154 if that's the route he wants to take instead of a tune-up. What about Jermell Charlo? Who would you like to see him face next?
Who would I like to see? Let me start with who I think is first in line. I guess it's Erickson Lubin is first in line. It seems like he's the guy. That's a legitimate matchup, obviously. But after their most recent fights and what happened in their first meeting, I'd make Charlo a big favorite.
Yeah.
Listen, I know Brian Castano is the number one challenger to Patrick Teixeira's title, WBO title, but he'd be a great opponent for Charlo, I think. Remember, he beat Michel Soro and he drew with Erislandy Lara. That guy's good.
I thought he won the Lara fight.
Right. And I'm fascinated with Tim Tszyu. I would love a Charlo Tszyu matchup. I doubt that happens, but it's a fascinating concept. Hurd maybe is another guy, maybe Jarrett Hurd. There are a lot of good options for Charlo. Man, he's in charge. I mean, he fights who he wants now, 154.
And there are a lot of great names from him to choose from. I mean, the names that stand out to me are Hurd and Lara. Maybe Julian Williams gets his crack, but who knows? Either way, lots of great fights to come. Very, very happy to see Jermell do what he did on Saturday night. That was quite a performance. Now, in the co-feature, Luis Nery took on Aaron Alameda for the vacant WBC World Super Bantamweight title. That's the title that was vacated by Ray Vargas when he suffered a leg injury. The undefeated Nery, moving up from 118 pounds, was a heavy favorite coming in, but Alameda wasn't a slouch. A very competitive bout. Nery came out on top, winning a unanimous decision to become the world champion. Mike, what was your take on Pantera's performance?
So that was the surprise of the card for me. I thought, based on what we knew of Nery and the fact that Alameda was this obscure, relatively obscure guy, I thought we would get an early knockout or a knockout for sure. Instead, we got what I thought was a close, competitive fight. I'd have to go back. I think I scored it 15-13. Give credit to Alameda. I mean, that guy turned out to be a good fighter. But the key here is that Nery also just didn't seem to have the power he's had at 118, which is strange because he stopped other junior featherweights in the past. I don't know. Maybe it was a bad night. Maybe Alameda is just a good and durable guy. I'll say this, I don't look at Nery with the same awe that I did before this fight. To be fair, it's just one fight. Again, maybe an off night, but at this moment, I don't look at Nery quite the same. Maybe he's just not going to be that dynamo that he was at 118 and below.
Yeah, he did box more than we're accustomed to, and Alameda's size was a deterrent as well. He looked significantly bigger than Luis Nery. He wasn't necessarily a puncher, but the size difference to me stood out. But he was a pretty good boxer. Yeah, I don't know what that means for Nery going forward in this new weight class, but he does have a lot of options in terms of opponents. Who would you like to see him face next?
Well, it's funny coming on the heels of my criticism. First of all, I should give the guy credit for the way he boxed. I mean, he did box well enough to win the fight, so I'll give him credit with that. But maybe he unifies with Akhmadaliev or Angelo Leo. Angelo Leo, that's a nice fight. I like Nery and Leo. Carlos Castro is the top challenger now that Nery won the vacant WBC title, so obviously he's a candidate. Daniel Roman, who we'll talk about in a little bit, is right behind Castro in the WBC rankings. How about Nery and Brandon Figueroa? I mean, that would be an interesting. That'd be a war. Stephen Fulton is another guy that jumps to mind. Nery's also mentioned the possibility of going down to 118 again. Maybe that's where he's better off. I don't know if he can make that weight, but maybe he's better off there. Casimero, maybe, who we'll also talk about in a little bit. He's also talked about 126. Which, after what I saw Saturday, I'm not sure that's a good idea. But he also has a lot of different options.
Yeah, he does. And let's not forget Ray Vargas, who I'm not sure when he's coming back, but I'm sure he's got first dibs on that. Nery did call out Brandon Figueroa, as you said, and that's one person I wouldn't mind seeing him against because I think that's going to be that would be a great fight. But one guy I really want to see him face is the guy we're going to be talking about in the next fight. It was a battle of former champions as Danny Roman took on Juan Carlos Payano in a world title eliminator for the belt that is held by Luis Nery now. It's a great fight, lots of two-way action. Roman came on late to win a decision, but Mike, it seemed a lot of people were expecting him to win by a wider margin. Were you one of those people? What was your take on what you saw Saturday night?
Yes, that fight was also somewhat of a surprise to me. I thought Roman would control the fight from the beginning to end. But Payano showed us something at 36 years old. He's still quick. He can still box. He was really impressive. I know he lost the fight, but if I were him, I think he is going to keep rolling. He seems like the kind of guy who is going to fight till he's 50, which they mentioned on the telecast. To give him some credit, Roman picked up the pace as Payano maybe began to fade a little bit toward the end of the fight. So I don't have a problem with the decision. I just didn't think it was a great performance by Roman, though. I didn't see much fire from him most of the fight. Something was missing for me. He got the win. That's the objective, but something was missing.
Yeah. I don't know. Payano definitely brought it, and I think folks kind of underestimated him because of what Naoya Inoue did to him when he fought Payano and he knocked him out, and so people just assumed, Roman's going to do the same or dominate him, but
not the puncher that they are. Yeah,
he certainly isn't, and. Look, Payano had his moments against Luis Nery as well. I know he got knocked out, but he did have his moments there too. So I guess it wasn't too surprising. What do you think is next for Romando? Do you think he has what it takes to beat Luis Nery?
Well, I would give him a better chance after what I saw from Nery on Saturday. I think I'd still probably go with Nery, but he's got a chance against Nery, and that's a good matchup. Maybe he fights. As I mentioned earlier, he's they entered the weekend. He was number 3 in the WBC rankings, and Carlos Castro was number 2. Maybe they fight in a title eliminator.
Well, this was the title eliminator. The Payano versus that was but the thing is that it's so convoluted, right? Like you've got Ray Vargas there, you got who knows,
Yeah, I just confused myself, but it kind of makes sense for me. Maybe for 3 to fight 2, since neither guy was number 1 going into the fight.
Right.
Maybe Figueroa is another possibility for Roman.
Right.
I don't know. I'd like to see Roman step up in opposition and show us a little bit more next time.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to the second 3-fight card from last Saturday, beginning with the main event as unbeaten WBC World Middleweight Champion Jermall Charlo took on number 1 contender Sergey Derevyanchenko. Both guys had their moments here. It was a great, great fight. But Charlo, with his size, his jab, his power, his everything really, retains his title by unanimous decision, although I don't think there were any losers in this fight. Mike, how good was the action here?
Well, I expected a good competitive fight, and that's what we got. I mean, how could it not have been? What struck me most was Charlo's performance, though. I thought he controlled the fight with his jab. He was poised. He looked like a champion. He weathered Derevyanchenko's pressure, which we knew was inevitable, better than Daniel Jacobs and Gennady Golovkin did. I wouldn't necessarily call it a breakthrough performance for Jermall because he's had other quality wins, but it does lift him to another level. This isn't even a criticism. I mean, I was waiting for him to do something spectacular, maybe land a huge punch, maybe put him down or knock him out. I think that would have made it even a more special performance. But that's a lot to ask against a guy like Derevyanchenko, this good, experienced, durable guy. Kudos to Jermall. Just an excellent performance.
Yeah, I mean, Derevyanchenko is incredible. He's got a great, great chin because he ate some bombs. He was wobbled a few times, and it seems like every single time he was wobbled, it came at the end of the round, so there was no chance for follow-up. But I doubt that guy was going anywhere. Fight of the year candidate, in my opinion. I think it would have been electric if there were fans there. Both guys were tested in that fight, and I think Jermall Charlo proved that he is the man at 160 pounds, assuming Canelo stays at 168. The question is, where does he go from here?
Man, there's some juicy possibilities. So in my perfect world, he fights Canelo Alvarez. I don't see that happening necessarily, at least not now. I'd love to see him fight Triple G.
Yeah,
that would be something. Can that happen? I don't know. Demetrius Andrade. To be honest, I'm not as excited about that fight because of Andrade's style. But hey, that unifies 2 titles, and it's a tough fight for Charlo. I think an obvious choice is Chris Eubank Jr. And that's a legitimate fight. I just hope he fights a legitimate threat to keep his momentum going because he's got a lot of momentum right now.
Yeah, I think Andrade's a good fight because it's unification. Golovkin's a good fight because it's a unification. I like Eubank at 160 as well because I think it's an exciting fight between 2 guys who like to, get in there and battle. What about Derevyanchenko, though? His manager said that he may move down to 154 pounds. Do you think that's a good idea?
I didn't even see that. That's an interesting concept. If he could make the weight, man, he would. If he could make the weight and still be strong,
big if though.
He'd be tough for the 154 pounders, wouldn't he?
Yeah, sure.
How about Jermell against Derevyanchenko?
Oh my goodness,
the whole family's taking Derevyanchenko down, right?
I like that. Yeah, I if he can do it and do it in a healthy manner, that's my concern, especially after all the wars that he's been through. Because we've seen fighters move back down and it didn't end well. Roy Jones, Chris Bird comes to mind.
Those are big drops, though.
Yeah, they certainly were. It's just 6 pounds here, so maybe he can make the weight just fine. Now in the co-feature, unbeaten Brandon Figueroa looked like he hadn't missed a beat. He wore down Damian Vasquez, stopped him in the 10th round to retain his WBA World Super Bantamweight title. I love the performance, Mike. What did you think of what you saw from him Saturday night?
I have to admit, I think I underestimated Figueroa a little bit after his brutal fight with Julio Ceja in November, which was just a war. He might not be the world's best boxer or the best athlete, but I think his skill level is higher than some people might think. He's a good sized guy for that division, and man, oh man, he's strong, he's tough, and he's just relentless. He just ripped apart a pretty good fighter in Vasquez with that pressure. I was hoping that they would stop it earlier than they did. That was just, the ending was just brutal. He did a number on that guy. I think he can give anyone problems, anyone. He's a little bit like Leo Santa Cruz. He's just a guy that's going to throw a million punches and just never stop coming. That was an impressive performance.
Yeah, I was definitely impressed by him. It's hard to believe he's only 23 years old. There's a lot of room for improvement there, and he's already formidable. I mean, he's a world champion. Now, Luis Nery says he wants him next. That would be a unification. Who would you favor in that bout?
Oh, man. You know what? I generally go with the guy I think is a better boxer, and I think Nery's probably a better boxer. But I think the pressure might be the kryptonite to that. That might counteract that. I don't know. It's a fascinating matchup. I think my gut says Nery, but I would give Figueroa a chance based on what we know.
Yeah, I give him a great chance. I mean, especially Nery wasn't really able to hurt Alameda. He would have to hurt Brandon Figueroa in order to slow him down. And so far, from what we've seen, Figueroa takes a good shot. You know what?
So, you know what? I think Figueroa might be a better style for Nery than Alameda. It may be as strange as that sounds. I think Nery, for a guy to come right to Nery, which
right into his wheelhouse,
that might work in Nery's favor. So maybe it's not the best matchup for Figueroa. I'd pay to see that fight, though.
Yeah, it'd be a great fight. Someone's definitely getting hurt in that fight. Speaking of getting hurt, now in the televised opener, WBO World Bantamweight Champion John Real Casimero did his thing, knocking out previously unbeaten Duke Micah of Ghana in 3 rounds. A surprise to me for sure, as I was not expecting Casimero to win, let alone blast Micah out of there. Mike, give us your thoughts on Casimero's performance.
He looked like a little beast, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
I think he's a little wild at times. I'm not sure discipline's his forte in the ring. Maybe he's even a little too easy to hit, but he just comes at you with bad intentions, and he has the power to hurt you, as we saw with Micah. One thing that's interesting about Casimero is that he started as a small flyweight. I think his first fight was like at 108.5 pounds, but he's retained his power at bantamweight, which is 118. In fact, he seems to have gotten more powerful as he moved up in weight. He had 8 knockouts in his first 16 fights. He has 13 knockouts in his last 18 fights, including 6 in a row now. So he's just sizzling hot at the moment. I think he's really a guy to watch.
Yeah, he's definitely found his groove. I thought he looked great. I also thought Michael looked overmatched, flat. Perhaps the moment got to him. Perhaps he overtrained. Either way, I doubt it would have mattered much for Casimero, who wants everyone in the division, especially Naoya Inoue. Is that the fight to make?
I wanted to mention something. I'll get to that in a second. I wanted to ask you something, though. You're an expert in African boxing, and this sort of applies to all small countries, I think. I just have a theory with Micah. You have guys like Micah who do real well in their countries, against that level, whatever level it is that he's facing in his country, and then all of a sudden, in one fell swoop, he makes this giant step up in competition without really being prepared for it. It's almost like putting him in an unfair situation. In a normal, building up a fighter, normally he would take increments. He would step up, fight to fight, and then face a guy like Casimero. I almost think it's not fair to put him in a ring with a guy like Casimero, because if he was more seasoned, maybe he would have had a chance. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'd have liked to have seen him against even like a Rashi Warren. I don't know if he could beat a Warren or an Emmanuel Rodriguez or whoever, but there are a lot of mid-tier fights that he could have taken that would have better prepared him for this moment, because he was simply overmatched. I mean, he was out of his depth against Casimero. I thought the experience was obvious. Casimero sort of felt him out in the first round and then just started throwing bombs. And, listening to what Casimero said about, I saw he was hurt in the first round from a body shot, but I decided to take my time. He sounded like a veteran. He was saying all the things that a veteran says. And so I think that Micah was out of his league. And I tend to agree. I mean, there's some times where folks will surprise you. I think Ricardo Torres, remember when he fought Miguel Cotto?
Well, look at Azuma Nelson's the best example ever.
Exactly. Azuma
he came out of nowhere and he fights Salvador Sanchez.
On like 8 days' notice.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. You just never know.
Right. So, yeah, exactly. So I guess it depends. But I think in Micah's case, he hadn't really shown
Right.
that he was ready for that. And in his last fight against Yanel Rivera, who's probably a fringe contender at best, Mike was dropped. So perhaps that was a harbinger. I really don't know, but I agree with you with respect to him being ready. I think another fight or two makes sense. Now, what about Inoue?
That would really be something. You got two experienced power punchers like that. The problem is that Inoue's got Jason Maloney next. So I mean, who knows when it would happen? Assuming he beats Maloney, yeah, maybe it happens sometime in the middle of next year. I love that fight. Nonito Donaire would be a great fight for Casimero, but he's set to fight Nordine Ubali, if that's how you say his name. Yeah. Maybe Casimero fights one of the winners of those fights next year. Yeah, that's the natural thing. In the meantime, I think if he wants to fight before that, I think he and his handlers are going to have to be creative if they want to make an interesting fight. I went through the list, and nobody really jumped out at me as the perfect opponent for him. So we'll see.
Yeah, and he seems ready to take on a big name right now. It seems like this was sort of his tune-up. So we'll see what happens. All right, it's time for Mike and I to go toe-to-toe. Every week we discuss or debate a topic or two, and this week's is fairly relevant based on what occurred last weekend. We saw the Charlo twins, Jermall and Jermell Charlo, notch career-defining victories in impressive fashion. It certainly changed the way a lot of folks look at them. So with that in mind, the question is, are the Charlo twins pound for pounders? Let's start with older brother Jermall, Mike. Is he on your list? And if yes, where do you have him ranked?
Well, the proof is in the pudding for me, if that's the right expression here, because they're both now on the Boxing Junkie pound for pound list. Now, just to explain how our list works, we have a top 15 and then we have 5 honorable mentions. So there's basically 20 guys. They both entered as honorable mentions, meaning that they're in the top 20. I think they both have, it's obvious, they have the ability to make the top 15. But it's hard to make that jump when you don't beat a guy that's already on the pound for pound list. For example, if Teofimo Lopez beats Vasily Lomachenko, he'd have to move into the top 15 because Lomachenko is number 1. If you understand what I'm saying. Yeah,
that's interesting to me because then I wonder, who did Terence Crawford or Alexander Usyk beat to get on a pound for pound list? Certainly didn't beat anyone on pound for pound list.
Right. Well, it depends on who's on there at the time, and there's so many different. First of all, this is very subjective, as we've discussed in the past. Right. And there's so many different factors. It's the timing, who you beat, when you beat them, that kind of thing. Usyk did have a couple of big wins. He beat Brightus, for example.
He beat Ngassiev.
Ngassiev. Yeah, so he did have some good wins. And we can go back to the Crawford thing. I think there's a good argument there that, he hasn't beaten the top guys. Maybe he's, and then it goes. What percentage do you give the eye test? Is opposed to the resume? that kind of thing. So there's a zillion different variables here. But I think the bottom line is that they prove that they belong, and I think they're only going to continue to go up as they continue to win.
Yeah, I think that I have Jermell very high. I think you can make a case that he's a top 5 pound for pounder, certainly top 10. I think that Jermall is a top 10 pound for pounder, and I based this on resume. Looking at the guys I would have on my list: Canelo Alvarez, Errol Spence Jr., Vasily Lomachenko, Terence Crawford, Alexander Usyk, Naoya Inoue, Manny Pacquiao, Mikey Garcia. But after that, who could you possibly place higher than the Charlos? I really don't know. I mean, you look at their resumes. Jamal's fought Deverenchenko, Austin Trout when Trout was formidable, Julian Williams, Matt Karaboff, Dennis Hogan. I know it seems like a lesser name, but Dennis Hogan, in the eyes of many, beat Jaime Munguia last year at 54. And then you look at Jermell and, Jason Rosario, Tony Harrison, Austin Trout, Erickson Lubin, go back in the day, Vanes Martirosyan and Gabriel Rosado. I mean, he's the king of a stacked division. Who are the guys that you have ahead of them? I honestly can't see how Jermell Charlo is not a top 5, top 7 pound for pounder.
I think you could argue that. I honestly do. It kind of goes back to the timing in the process. There there were some issues, like when Adrian Broner burst onto the scene. He ended up like really high in some pound for pound list, and then he just came crashing down. So people said, maybe it was a little bit too early. So the way that I operate is do it in increments. They weren't on the pound for pound list before this past weekend, so now they're on the pound for pound list, and then you kind of just take it a step at a time, and you move them up. And again, they didn't beat a guy that was on the pound for pound list, so it's a little bit. That's an argument against putting them up too high. The guys that I have above them are also, this is again very subjective. Juan Francisco Estrada, Tyson Fury. Arthur Beterbiev. Now you could say that maybe he doesn't have the resume either.
Not even close.
Right. But he just looked incredible in the one big fight that he had. Josh Taylor, you mentioned Manny Pacquiao. Srisaket Rungvisai's actually had a number of really good victories. I have Leo Santa Cruz at 15. So, these are all really good fighters that some have better resumes, some have really good on the eye test. Yeah, that's how it is. Again, really subjective. I would just say, listen, they're on the list and they're moving up.
Yeah, we could go back and forth about it. Personally, I think that that both of them should be on the list, and Jermell's certainly higher. I have a question for you.
I don't agree with that.
Who do you rank higher of the two?
Yeah, I don't agree with that, by the way. I respect the hell out of Jermell. As a matter of fact, I would say that he has more fire. I keep using that word fire. I love the fighter who has fire, and maybe it goes back to like Roberto Duran. I think Jermell's got that fire, and I love that about him. I just think that Jermell's a better boxer. I think Jermell still has a few issues. One of them, he tends to be passive at times. I think that even in his corner, his trainer even said, "Listen, you got to pick up the pace." At one point, I could be wrong about that. He gets passive. He maybe waits a little bit sometimes too long. Now he would say, "Listen, I'm setting up the knockout. I'm setting up the big punches," and he probably is. So I got to give him that. But meanwhile, he's losing rounds, or he's allowing rounds to be close. So I think this is a problem for him. I think he needs to be busier. Listen, I really hesitate to criticize him after a performance like that, because that was a spectacular performance. But I'm just telling you, overall, this is how I feel about him. I think Jermell's performance was just tight. It was really, really tight. That jab. He's a really, really good boxer. The poise. I think Jermell got a little wild at times early in the fight too. He threw these crazy overhand. Jermell,
you mean?
Jermell, yeah. He threw these crazy overhand punches. I just think Jermell's a little bit more polished. Maybe doesn't have quite the power. I'm not saying he's a lot better. I think he's a little bit better than Jermell. But listen, both guys are pound for pound.
Yeah, it's so hard to say. Who's better. I've noticed that Jermell has done at his past 2 or 3 fights or so where he's come out winging shots early on. I think he's just trying to test his opponent's jaw right away and sort of set the tone for the fight. I do know that Derek James said before the fight, in the days leading up to it, that he expected Jermell to have to box more, that he was going to have to, move around, take his time. And I think that was the strategy, was to pick his shots, use his jab, which I thought he used really, really well. He did land some good body shots. And while he certainly wasn't active, he was effective. And so I take nothing away from him with respect to that. And what's interesting is that the strategy that Rosario used was the same one that was employed by Tony Harrison in the rematch against Charlo. And I remember thinking, man, he's going to wear Charlo down. But all of a sudden, Charlo just started picking it up and boxing and jabbing and throwing combinations. And I was like, wow, he's, working his way back into the fight. And then, boom, he lands the money punch and knocks him out. And that's what we saw here. So no question, I think what we can both agree on is these are two elite fighters. They're just entering their prime, 30 years old. They look better than ever. And right now are at the fore of their respective divisions. Now, we could go back and forth about this all day, but unfortunately, that's going to do it for today's show. We want to thank Regis Prograis for coming by. Great stuff from him. And we want to thank you guys for tuning in. As a reminder, the PBC Podcast can be found on iTunes, YouTube, the PBC website, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud. Honestly, I could go on and on. So wherever you find us, be sure to like and subscribe, and to check us out next week for more boxing chatter on the PBC Podcast.